He reached into the toilet, grabbed his turd, and flung it at the correctional officer's face, at which point the turd slammed into the correctional officer's face, right into his mouth. You might want to stick around for this story because it's just that disturbing. Dude named Tamarcus Porter. That's right, Tamarcus Porter. We're going to put his picture right here. Get a good look at him, and I'm going to let his picture just linger there because I want you to envision and picture this savage as I tell this story. According to WWL News, which comes outside of New Orleans, an inmate was sentenced to life after hurling feces at an officer's face. That's right. Yeah, you see him right there. It says, and I'm reading, the article is by Eon Ozine, and it says, a state inmate from New Orleans has received a life sentence after a jury found him guilty of throwing his feces at a correctional officer, hitting him in the face. That's right. Turd just hit my man right in the face. Imagine being a correctional officer and going to work and getting a turd slung at your face and landing in your mouth. He used his turd as a weapon. Tamarcus. Yeah, we still got his picture. Look at him. He used his turd as a weapon. But listen, don't feel bad for this dude because he's not like those monkeys on Madagascar that talk about slinging their poop. This is a human being. Well, at least he's supposed to be a human being, right? Because Tamarcus is really just a savage. Because if you find out, and I'm going to tell you, stick around, what he actually did to wind up in prison in the first place. And this story is coming outside of a place called Washington Correctional Institution, WCI. I personally done prison time in WCI, and I recently done a story. And speaking of poop, I've never spoke about poop on any of my channels. But speaking of poop, I recently done a story about how we had to literally shovel human feces inside a field so that we can grow the crops and eat the food by fertilizing it with human feces. I will connect that video at the end of this video. You should definitely check that story out. So Tamarcus Porter was jailed at the BB60 Rayburn Correctional Center, which is the old WCI Correctional Center, when the incident happened. Prosecutors told the jury that Porter reached into his cell's toilet and flung the dung at the officer after he gave Porter an order while making his rounds. In prison, he was probably in extended lockdown. And when officers walk the block on extended lockdown, they have certain things that they're looking for during count time, and there are certain things that you have to do during certain hours, such as not be underneath your covers during count so they can count you. So you have to be out. So maybe this dude got offended or they wanted him to clean his cell, and so he reached in, grabbed his turd, and hit the officer with it. Well, the fecal matter hit the officer and landed in the officer's face and on his arms and legs. The feces also hit a second correctional officer who was coming to help in the head and on his shoulders. So another officer got hit in his head and his shoulders, right? He had poo-poo on his shoulders that Tamarcus hit him with. It was Tamarcus's poo, because if you're in extended lockdown, you're likely in a single man cell. And if you're in that single man cell, it's just you. So it's just your poop. Nobody else has that poop in the toilet. It's a single toilet, single man cell. So other officers later arrived to subdue Porter. Porter was already in jail on a manslaughter charge for killing, that's right, here we go, we're going to get into this, a German tourist in New Orleans, slashing her throat and dumping her body in Armstrong Park. He initially indicated on a second-degree unaliving for that case, but the charge was later reduced. He was reduced to manslaughter. But if you go back, which I did, and read the testimony and some of the transcripts on Tamarcus's case against this German tourist, he should have never been able to cop out to a lesser unaliving charge. But in the city of New Orleans, they're just happy to get any kind of charge because they got so many savages running loose who have not been caught for the crimes that they committed. I guess they were just willing to make a bargain. But it gets deeper. See, I'm going to finish reading this article and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Tamarcus. In addition, Porter was convicted of and is serving time for the unaliving charge. Porter was serving time for convictions of aggravated second-degree battery. It's another one of the charges. A lot of these charges, he actually caught since he'd been incarcerated. Aggravated battery, aggravated SA, that's right, that word, theft, illegal carrying a weapon, introduction of contraband into a penal institution, and criminal damage to property charges. That means he's probably destroying property inside the state prisons or inside Orleans Parish Prison. I don't know. But if you go back and read the story of this dude when he initially got arrested for the unaliving of the German tourist. And I looked it up. You can't find a lot of information on the tourist. He literally, gave her a smiley face on her neck. He did that to her. He slit it, her neck, and left her just there. And she had actually befriended this dude, this guy right here. And I can't find a picture of this German tourist, but I'm going to put her name out. I'm actually going to pause it for a second, and I'm going to come back with her name, because I believe when we tell these stories, we shouldn't get glamorized by, too often we get glamorized by the criminals and the culprits themselves, and we forget about the victims. And I want to put this lady's name down because she was the victim. Her name was, and I'm probably not pronouncing this right. If you're German, then you can, tell me that I pronounced it wrong. I'm fine with that. I know I'm probably going to pronounce this wrong, but I want to give this lady credit. And it's unfortunate I can't find her face. But her name was Gisela Grabel Dagmar. That was her name. And she unfortunately lost her life, and she actually befriended to Marcus. And this happened in 2011. And it wasn't until 2019 that they were finally able to make a plea bargain with Marcus, and he accepted a 20-year sentence. That's right, he only got 20 years for taking this poor lady's life. So while he's incarcerated, he racks up a slew of other charges. And the reason it took him from 2011 to 2019 to convict this savage was because all of the mental health professionals came in and said, oh, he's not competent to stand trial. He's not competent to stand trial. So it drug on for over 5 years as he waited to get dealt with, man, as justice waited to tip the scales against this savage. He waited for over 5 years because he was playing crazy. Is he crazy? Anybody who savagely takes another person's life is mentally unwell. A mentally unwell person does that. A wicked, evil person does that. His actions since he's been incarcerated prove that this dude is probably beyond repair in a lot of ways, unless he gives his life to Jesus. This dude is a savage. He is constantly destroying things and destroying lives. And now the jury up in Washington Parish, that's where I done time at WCI, Washington Correctional Center. They call it BB60 now. He's actually an ex-senator of Louisiana who played the old school guitar, I think. They call him BB60. So BB is now the name of the correctional institution of Washington Parish. These rednecks don't play. He threw poo-poo on that man's face, and now he's doing a life sentence, and he should do a life sentence. He ain't ever going to get out. He's crazy anyway. He's probably going to throw more poo on people. They probably going to put him, tie him down and feed him with a loaf and feed him through a straw, because they're not going to play this stuff. They're going to find a way to deal with him. They're going to put a mask over him. He's going to spend the rest of his life tied down to a bunk. And he's a savage. He needs to be tied down to a bunk because the people he's harming and hurting. Imagine if you was a correctional officer, you want poo-poo thrown in your face? That's crazy. I saw that while I was incarcerated. People do use their fecal matter as a biological weapon incarcerated. But anyway, I just wanted to get this story out there about this guy. And if you think that you can't get a life sentence for throwing poop on somebody, you sadly mistaken. And believe one thing, that I believe other cases are going to case law and use this as a reference on why they can give you life and why they should give you life. So if you know somebody who's in prison, who's playing those biological warfare games by throwing poop and pee and feces all over people, you better tell them be careful, because now a life sentence option is on the table for the justice system. And I personally think that if you throw feces on somebody's face, a life sentence should be something that's considered, because you can do that much damage to a person biologically with your waste. Man, give me a like and subscribe to the Pen and the Shank. Let's get it.